Hello everyone, odedex here, welcome to Feed the Basics episode 2. As you can see, I'm in front of what seems to be a very artificial ravine, because I actually made that ravine. As you can see, the reason why I did this is to show you that in Feed the Beast you can expect to find a lot of new resources. Now, when you see it in first glance, you may ask yourself, what the hell do I need all those resources for? But trust me, you do. So I kind of made this giant ravine just to show you the sheer difference of new things that you might not recognize. This is, of course, is iron. However, what is this? I don't know. This is coal. No idea what it is. This as well. Many different new resources that you don't actually recognize. Now, coming from vanilla, you usually know that even if you don't know a use for something, it's usually a good idea to keep it. But this is not the point of this episode. The point of this episode is kind of to teach you guys the most basic concept, in my opinion, of Feed the Beast. And for that, I got myself a fancy house, some high production value right there. Let's assume that you've come from a very successful mining operation. You got yourself perfectly a stack of most ores. Also got yourself a nice amount of coal, some lapis, some redstone, and some diamonds. Usually, in vanilla, what you usually do is simply take your iron ore that you mine so hard for, go to your furnace, dump, let's say, 8 of them, and cook them to get some iron ingots, of course taking after some time. In Feed the Beast, this is actually blasphemy. You would never want to do something like this because you got so much other tools to increase your production value of each iron ore. And the way to do this is simply coming back to the previous episode. I mentioned how powerful NEI is, and here's another example how. If you hit uses of an iron ore, you get back this window that I kind of glanced over in the previous time with those titles right over here. So as you can see, you got the normal smelting recipe. Placing an iron ore in a smelting block such as the furnace gives you an iron ingot with some sort of fuel. But you can also use a powered furnace, which is not really recommended, but where the power comes in Feed the Beast is the duplicating of resources. Or not duplicating, but simply doubling the value of each ore. So for example, when you use the Pulverizer, you actually invest something called 400 MJ, which stands for Minecraft Joules. It's a type of energy which I'm about to talk about in a minute. Basically, with the process of placing an iron ore, you get 2 pulverized iron, and a 10% chance of getting also pulverized ferrous metal. In addition, you can also use an Induction Smelter, which again is one additional block available in Feed the Beast, specifically from thermal expansion. Which, if you combine iron ore with a piece of sand and invest 320 microjoules, you get 2 iron ingots. You basically, once again, you double the production value of an iron ore, and you also got a 5% chance to get rich slag. And for example, if you got rich slag, you can then combine it with an iron ore to even triple the value of an ore and get 3 iron ingots and get some slag, normal slag as well. You got the macerator, which once again gives you this 2 iron dust. And you also have the rock crusher. Iron ore gives you 2 iron dust. And the reason why all of those machines are here, mainly because Feed the Beast introduces a lot of more complicated blocks and more expensive blocks other than usual. In vanilla Minecraft, the most complicated blocks you can make, or the most expensive ones you can make, in my opinion, is pretty much the diamond chestplate. I think is the most expensive thing you can make in vanilla. But in Feed the Beast, this is far from being the case. So this is why you have to understand the concept that whenever you mine something, you usually want to increase your production rate. So let's actually show you how to do it in my opinion, the most basic form. What I'm going to use is the Pulverizer, one of the 4 methods to double your production rate. I'm going to create the Pulverizer. In order to create the Pulverizer, I'm going to need a piston, I'm going to need flint, I'm going to need some copper, and I'm going to need the machine frame and a redstone reception coil. This is one more concept that you should start understanding, is that because some of those machines are a little more expensive than, let's say, a vanilla block, most of them use kind of intermediate recipes block in them. So for example, a Pulverizer uses a machine frame. A machine frame on its own does nothing, but when you use it as a part of the recipe, it also means you already invested 4 iron ingots, a piece of iron ingot, and 4 pieces of glass. So this is kind of a way to increase the value of most recipes. So let's go ahead and create one pulverizer. Actually conveniently created most of the required materials to craft one, and also a bit more. So coming to my crafting grid, I'm actually gonna once again use NEI and use my question mark method. So in order to craft a pulverizer, first I'm going to piston. So coming over to the piston crafting recipe, I'm going to shift left click to create one piston and take out all the other materials back into my inventory. I'm going to go ahead and shift left click to create one machine frame. Again, collect everything back to my inventory. And I'm going to create one redstone reception coil. And again, collect everything back into my inventory. And finally, I can actually create the actual recipe and start it. Now, before I do that, you may actually notice this thing right here. The copper here, I require copper ingot. Copper is a new ore introduced by many different mods, and that's actually the reason why you see the icons changing here. If you actually go to NEI and type copper ingot, you can see you got 3 types of ingots, and you actually miss one. There is also this type of ingot, which is simply labeled as copper. The reason that's it's in here is because so many different mods rely on adding new resources, but they cannot rely on other mods to add them for them, to add the resource for them. So each mod introduces its own copper, for example, but Forge, which is the API which collects everything together, which binds all the mods together, has something called the ore dictionary, the Forge ore dictionary. What this gives you as a player is when you want to craft a recipe from a specific mod that, for example, uses copper, you can use any type of copper from any of the different mods that you somehow managed to acquire it from. Usually, when you play with a specific pack on Feed the Beast, the FTB team usually takes care of that by changing the config options to only allow 1 copper to spawn in the world. In terms of world generation, but sometimes that's not the case also because there are different methods to craft the different types of ingots. So sometimes you may end up with different types of same item pretty much, and the ore dictionary lets you change the recipes, change the different items in the same recipe. So finally, let's get to actually crafting a pulverizer. Once again, I'm going to bring up the pulverizer item. Shift left click gives me the pulverizer. This is a thermal expansion item, as I've mentioned, and one of the most basic ones, in my opinion, and one of the most important ones. When you place it in the world, you can already see it has a nice shape to it and some interface options on the sides, on the top. When you right-click it, you get this interface. It might be frightening to begin with, but it's actually very, very simple. First thing is you actually get the tutorial. If you hide your NEI, you can kind of read it, pretty much what it does, but it's very simple actually. You also get some information. The pulverizer smashes things into other things useful for processing ores or converting items. This is typically not reversible. What that means basically is when you place an iron ore in the input slot, which is right here, you get the process done. But however, how do I make this thing work? There is no space for coal. I cannot cook stuff. This is not the output slot. This is the output slot, not the input slot. So I cannot place coal here. So how does it work? Well, there is this button right here which says energy. As you can see, the pulverizer is working on energy. Specifically, it's working on Buildcraft energy. Buildcraft energy is the basic mod that supplies Minecraft joules, and thermal expansion is kind of a sub-mod to Buildcraft. However, that's not exactly right. It simply relies on the existing energy network supplied by Buildcraft. In addition to that, you also got a redstone control. You can tell your system, for example, to only work when there is no redstone signal, like this right now. You can also tell your block only to work when there is a signal, and you can tell it to ignore signal entirely. So it doesn't matter if there is a signal or not, it will simply work. And finally, there is the configuration. I'm going to get to that later, but at the moment, let's ignore it. So, how do you get the pulverizer to work? Well, you're going to need some Minecraft joules, and the most basic way to create Minecraft joules is using some Buildcraft engines. Most specifically, I'm going to go for the Stirling Engine. The Stirling Engine is one of the most basic engines available in Feed the Beast. It's specifically, again, a buildcraft engine, but you can actually get, as you can see, you got many different engines specifically from railcraft. You got an engine from industrial craft. You've got an engine from forestry, one more for forestry, and one from even red power, and two more engines for thermal expansion on its own. All of them rely on the basic buildcraft engines code, but most of them work differently. I'm going to use the Stirling engine because it's very simple to operate. Once again, I'm going to need a piston. I'm going to need this new item, which I'm not familiar with, glass and some cobblestone. So coming back to my crafting grid, let's see what do I need. So to craft the Stirling engine, I'm going to need one piston, so let's get that out of the way. I'm going to need some cobblestone, and I'm going to need some glass. However, the other thing which I'm not familiar with is this thing, the stone gears. Stone gear is once again one of those stepping stones in terms of crafting recipes which you simply have to invest in order to craft something. So this recipe basically forces you to invest 8 additional cobblestone and 8 additional sticks, because this is the only way that it can be crafted in 3x3 grid. So you kind of have to craft those intermediate recipes. So I'm going to need 2 stone gears. So that means 2 wooden gears. So that means 8 sticks. So let's craft 8 sticks. And let's set them up and craft ourselves 2 wooden gears. And now with cobblestone, let's craft 2 stone gears. And finally, let's complete the recipe and get ourselves a Stirling engine. Place it in the world. You can place it whenever you like. You can see it has kind of a directional logic to it. It faces upwards at the moment. And when you right click it, you get this block right here. Let's actually remove it. Let's break it. I'm going to help myself and get myself a pickaxe to make things faster. I'm going to break it and move it to actually be sitting right next to my pulverizer. Because this is the simplest way of moving buildcraft energy around, simply having an engine directly facing a block. There is a more advanced system to move energy around using pipes, but I'm going to get to that in a later episode. So the Stirling engine, being so basic as it is, all it requires is some sort of fuel. I'm going to use coal because it's convenient, and a redstone signal to start operating. Once again, I'm going to have NEI help me here. I'm going to get myself a lever, place it nearby, and turn it on. Now the engine starts working. As you can see, it consumed 1 piece of coal, and it also states this is kind of the burning. There is at the moment coal being burned and generating energy. You can actually click on this tab right here, and it actually tells you that the output, the current output, is generating 1 Minecraft joules per tick. There are 20 Minecraft ticks per second in Minecraft. This is a vanilla rule. And as you can see, a heat is building up. It's also storing a specific amount of energy. Those are kind of a side things you should know, but it's not very important. But basically it means, as you can see, that currently the engine is kind of at its blue state. The moment heat starting building up, it will get hotter and obviously run faster. And if it's actually generating too much energy, all the stored energy has nowhere to go, it will actually explode. So this is something to keep in mind, and you should actually note. Actually, I think the Stirling engine will not explode, it will simply overheat and stop, but other engines will usually explode if they have too much energy stored or they get too hot and they have nowhere to place that energy in. Now also while I was talking, you can see that iron ore is starting to be processed. You can see that the pulverizer stores a specific amount of energy, and whenever it goes above the threshold of which the amount of energy is enough to actually start the process, specifically 400 microjoules, it goes through the process of crafting the pulverized iron, and you actually double the amount of resources you basically have. Now, if you want some numbers, you can actually see, well, you might not be able to see it right here, but eventually it is more efficient, in terms of coal, it's more efficient to actually invest enough coal to pulverize something and then invest coal to burn the pulverized iron. This is something you also should note. Pulverized iron, you cannot do anything with it except smelting it directly into an iron ingot. So basically, that means the process is now doubled. Instead of directly smelting ore into ingot, you first pulverize it or crush it or whatever, and then smelt it. So you double the amount of processes, but it's still more efficient mostly in terms of resources, because usually iron is more precious than coal or any type of fuel. But also in terms of fuel, it's also more efficient. So finally, I've pulverized 5 pieces of iron, and now I can actually go ahead and smelt them here. Of course, once again, investing some coal, and it goes through the process of smelting and giving you pieces of iron. So from 5 iron ore, instead of getting 5 ingots, I'm going to get 10 ingots. Of course, I've invested some more time. The recipe for crafting a pulverizer also required some materials, so I also invested those, although those are one-time investments. And now for the long run, every time I mine something, I'm going to be able to duplicate the value of it. So this is actually a very powerful tool. And finally, as I've said, I'm going to cover what those things mean on the sides. As you can see, this is the input. It actually has a blue border around it. Now, if I click on the configuration cog right here, you can see there are those 5 buttons around it. This is the front, this is the side, this is the left side, the right side, the top, the bottom, and the back. You got 5 different slots, and you can see, for example, this is now red. I can now go ahead and disable it, and now there is nothing here. But what I can actually do, let's have the red on the right. What that means, if I'm going to get myself an additional chest, let's get the recipe for a chest, craft one, and start pulverizing a little bit more iron. As you can see, by the way, the machine also stores energy in reserve. What I can actually do, if I place a chest here, the moment the process finishes, what it's going to do is simply dump the output into the slot which I declare to be the right slot, which is right here into the chest. So this basically lets you dump a lot more things into it. And similarly, you can also use the top, for example, the blue as the input, and use other mechanics in Feed the Beast to automatically dump things into the pulverizer. However, the automation of machines will come in a later episode. I don't want to cram too much information into one episode. Overall, this is it. So again, this is the pulverizer. This is the thermal expansion machine. There is also the macerator from Industrial Craft. However, playing on the Darth 20 pack, the macerator, this is the recipe for the macerator. Playing on other packs with GregTech, which is a sub mod for Industrial Craft, actually modifies the recipe for a macerator, making it a lot more expensive, because according to the guy who created GregTech, in his opinion, and I understand him, duplicating the value of everything you mine is very strong, is a very strong ability, and he basically made the recipe for macerator a lot more pricey. But that's Industrial Craft. You also got the Rock Crusher, which is the Wellcraft method. It's actually a multi-block block. You need to build a specific, it needs to look in a specific way in order to work. And finally, there is the Induction Smelters. Again, is another method to do this. Also the grinder, which is something for factorization, but that's a whole different story. The factorization method of processing resources is very complicated, but actually can generate 3 times more by default if you do it right. So it's actually very strong. Finally, another actually useful use for NEI is almost every machine. If you click on the arrow, which is the recipes, if you left click it, you can actually see all the recipes that the pulverizer can do. And this is a very strong tool once again, because if you're a newcomer to Feed the Beast, this can basically let you know what can you do with every machine. So for example, the pulverizer can process quartz crystal once again, monazite ore, stone. I can make cobblestone out of stone if I so desire, gravel, cobblestone. And you can basically see all the different recipes that a specific machine can give you. And this is a very strong tool, once again, if you're new and unfamiliar with what you can do with every machine. Alright, this is it. What I tried to cover was basically the understanding of the necessity of duplicating your resources when possible because of the more expensive recipes available in Feed the Beast. I hope I kind of made my message understandable. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.